How to install MySQL in Windows 10. In this video tutorial, I will show you step-by-step process to download MySQL installer and install on Windows 10. To download MySQL installer, visit dev.mysql.com/downloads. So here you will find different download links. We have to download the community version. We will download MySQL installer for Windows. So click here, and here we have two options. First is MSI installer, which is 2.3 MB. So download this if you are online and you want to install while connected to the internet. And second is MSI installer, this one, and it is around 470 MB. So it contains all the complete package and you don't have to connect it to the internet for downloading. So I'm going to download this 470.2 MB installer, and this is MSI installer, which is going to be executed from the command prompt to install. So click here, and if you have username and password, you can also log into the Oracle account. For now, I will just click no thanks, just start my download. So after clicking this, download will start, and it will take around 20 seconds for the download to complete. So now the download is completed. I can click here, and it is now opening the installer. So it is preparing to install. So please wait while Windows configures MySQL installer, the community version. So it is configuring now, and soon installer will start. Soon a new interface will come up, which will guide through the installation process. So now the installer is started. So it is asking, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Now the MySQL installer is started, and we have these options for installation. So first is developer default. So if you want to use this machine for development, you can select this, and if you just want to install the server only component, you can select the server only. Client only option will just install the MySQL client to connect to the server running on remote machine. Then full is there, so full includes everything with the MySQL, and you can go to the custom installation where you can manually select the product that should be installed on the system. So for this tutorial, we are just going to select the developer default, and here it is showing which all components will be installed. So it is going to install the MySQL server, MySQL shell, then MySQL router, MySQL Workbench. So if you want to connect to the Visual Studio, it is installing the libraries to connect to the Visual Studio. Then there is a connector for Java, C++, ODBC and others, and then there are some examples and documentation as well. So we'll select the developer default and click next. So these are the requirements that we need to install, but for now we can skip. If you want, you can first you can download these. So if you want to use the Visual Studio, you can download install the Visual Studio, uh, and it is Python is also required. You can download and install the Python. So for now these two are not required, so I am clicking next. And then MySQL is going to install the MySQL server, MySQL Workbench, MySQL shell, a router, JDBC connectivity, C++ library, the documentation and examples. So we'll click on execute. So MySQL installer will install these one by one. So here you can click on the show details, so it will display what the installer is doing. So server is installed. Now it is installing the Workbench. And it is installing C:/program files/MySQL directory. So the progress is also displayed is 99% and going to complete. Now it is installing the MySQL shell. Installation is in still progress. Now all the components is installed, and you can see there is a check mark on all these components. If due to some reason some component is not installed, then you won't see the check mark here. So we'll click next. So now the installer is going to configure the MySQL server 8.0.27, router MySQL router 8.0.27, and then the examples. So we'll click next. So it is saying type of configuration: development computer, server computer, and dedicated computer. So for now we'll go for the development computer, and it is TCP/IP 300.33.066 and export is 33060. We'll click next. Click next, and we will write some password. So remember your password. So this is the root password for your MySQL. You can also create new users here, but for development and training purpose, we can just leave it. Now click next, and the service name is MySQL Server 80, and the runtime works Windows Services Standard System Account. So it is going to use the standard system account to run this service. You can also use any custom user for running the MySQL, but for this installation this is okay. Click next. If we click the execute, MySQL installer is going to perform these steps: writing configuration file, updating Windows firewall rules, adjusting Windows service, initializing the database, starting the server, applying security settings, and finally updating the start menu link. So click on execute. Now MySQL is performing all these operations. So you can see the logs as well here. Now it is initializing the database and it may take a long time. So initialization of the database is done. It is now starting the server. Server is started. It applied the security settings and finally updated the startup menu. Now we can click finish and so it is done. Now we can click the yes. So we exited the installer. Now I will show you how you can use the MySQL Workbench. So MySQL Workbench is here. So you can use the MySQL Workbench to connect to the database. Double click here. So it is connected to the localhost data. So this is a nice GUI and you can use this for managing the databases. So here you can see the server status. So it is running, it is on, and some other statistics. So we have the client configuration, then the options for database export and import, and then the dashboard. So a lot of things we have with this MySQL Workbench. So here it is the schema. So you can run this query show database to list down all the databases that we have into the this my SQL instance. So on this interface you can do a lot of things. Now I will show you how you can work with the MySQL terminal. So type the MySQL and select MySQL 8 command line. Here you have to type the password, root password, and now I will show you some of the examples of SQLs. So these SQL commands you should know. First is show databases. So first command is show databases. So this command. So this SQL command will list down all the databases into the MySQL server. To create a database, we can use the command create SQL. To create a database, we can run this SQL query create database SQL tutorials. So create query is create and then the database and finally the database name. So SQL tutorials. So this is now created a database called SQL tutorials. If I run show databases, it should display the name of database as well. So and if you want to drop a database or delete a database, you can run the command drop database SQL tutorials. So now the database is deleted. If you again run the show databases, it won't show you the database name. Create database SQL tutorials. So now it is created a database SQL tutorials, and to perform anything into the database, we need to connect to the database. So we will use the SQL command connect, then database name connect. So now we are connected to the SQL tutorials database. And sort tables is a SQL query which displays the database tables inside the database. So we just created the database, that's why there is no table. So we can also create a table with the this SQL query. The query is create table name, and the bracket is start and bracket end, and inside this we can define the structure of the table. So ID is of int type and not null, and it is auto increment. So if you insert a new record, ID will be incremented by 1. Then the username is varcat 200, email address is varcat 400, and here we are defining primary key as ID. Now we press the enter. Now it is saying 0 rows affected. So the query is okay. Now we can run the query. So tables, so we have the email table here, and since this is a new table, we don't have any data from inside this. So there is no data. Now I want to see now how I can see the structure of the uh, email table. So for this we can use the describe and email and the table name. So it is describing the table name, like it has got ID as an int type, null is not allowed, primary key and auto increment, and there are another two fields which is of varchar type. Now we'll learn how to insert the data into this table. So there is a SQL statement which is called insert, then into, and table name. So table name is email, and the fields are username, second is email address, and the values are this one and this one. So if we press enter, it is saying query is okay and one row affected. Now if we select star from email, it is going to select star from email. So it is displaying one record. Now we have learned how to create a table, insert a record inside the table, and fetch the record from the table. So to fetch the data, we can simply run the query select star from the table name. So it is displaying all the data, and you can see the primary key. You can see the primary key of this is 1, and now we can update the record using the update table name set field name equal to this value and where ID equal to 1. So it is going to update this table with the ID 1. So it is going to update the email address into this table. So it is saying this query matched one record, changed one record, and there are 0 warnings. Now we can run query select star from email. Now it is, you can see this Ujjwal@roseindia.net is updated to ujjwal.k@roseindia.net. So this way you can update the record as well. Now I want to another record. So another record is inserted. So in MySQL table you can insert a large number of records inside it, and now we'll run select star from email. 2 records is there, and you can see in next insert statement So you can see in the next insert statement it incremented the primary key to 1 and now it is 2. So to view all the record, we can selectively delete a record using the delete from email where id equal to 1. So this is going to display the, so this is going to delete the first record. So you can see query OK, one row affected, and if we run the select star from email, it will just show the only one record. Now to delete the table, you can use the query drop table and table name. So this drop table is going to delete the table and also the all the data. So once you delete the table, you won't be able to recover the data and data will be deleted from it. Now I don't want this database, so I can run the query drop database SQL tutorials. So it is deleted. Now we can run query show databases, and we don't have this MySQL tutorials database. So this way you can install the MySQL on Windows 10 and get started with the MySQL. So I explained you different queries of the MySQL, like you can connect to the MySQL command line to manipulate the data stored into the database. So this is just a beginning tutorial, and you can learn from our website. We have thousands of tutorials in MySQL, and you can go through all these tutorials and learn MySQL from scratch. Thanks for watching the video and subscribe our channel.